Thank you very much for everyone who's attending. I'm here just to talk a little bit about the housekeeping. There's going to be a couple of sessions today. If you have any questions, if you can use the Q&A function in Teams, you can submit your your questions at any point during the webinar. If we're able to, we'll answer them during the sessions. If we're not, then we'll do our best to address them after the event. Just to note that this webinar will be recorded so that it can be shared afterwards. So with that, I'm going to hand over to the Deputy Chair of the G+ organization, Lisbeth.
Thank you so much, Scott, and a warm welcome to all of you who have decided to join this session today, our Stakeholder Forum in Americas, and a huge welcome from the entire G+ Board of Directors. So looking forward to some hours together today, learning together and looking into what's going on in our industry when it comes to health and safety. And G+, we have become a true global organization, and we're supporting the wind industry and the entire wind industry, we can say now. And I think we can be really proud of how things are developing and becoming more and more globalized over the last years. We have 25 plus members and associates at this point, and with a huge number of working groups and different themes that we are working on together. I think we are really good at collaborating and not keeping things to ourselves, but really learning from each other, both good and bad, and to come together and share ideas and coming up with solutions together that helps our industry all the time get better when it comes to health and safety. And this is really something that is close to my heart, because safety is something that we can all share, and we all want everyone to come home safe every day. So with this, I hope we will spend the day together. We will see how we use shared data to make new solutions, how we use each other, and how things are developing at all times. And Scott, I will hand back to you with this welcome.
Thank you very much, Lisbeth. So again, thank you from myself and the Americas G+ focal group. I hope today is useful for everybody. I know that we've got some great groups. I just want to sort of talk a little bit about G+ and how it's made up. So if you could move to the next slide, thank you. So the G+ is made up of members and associates, which includes pretty much all of the major developers, or the active developers and the tier 1 contractors within the offshore wind industry, and obviously here in the US. And you'll hear and you'll see a lot from them today. If you can move on, please. Can you move the slide? I'm still seeing the same. Okay, fantastic. Thank you. So in the US, we have a lot of the same developers, people who are active over here. And G+ uses its unique forums and organization to improve health and safety by effectively creating an environment where everyone can share and learn without recourse and without it being considered a competitive advantage, which I think just grows on what Lisbeth was saying earlier. If you can move to the next slide, please. It achieves this in various different ways. It collects health and safety data, it analyzes that data, and it uses that data to inform, where actions need to be taken, whether that's through creation of good practice guides, whether that's through safe by design workshops, whether that's through information dissemination or toolbox talks. All of these are supported by the experts within the G+ members and within the associate members organizations. Additionally, the G+ group meets regularly to share experiences incidents, near misses, and any useful information from their own projects and from their own organization that can help others and learn and hopefully mitigate them within their organizations. And I can honestly say that it's a very rewarding experience, working in that environment. So in effort to keep us on target and maybe buy us a little bit of time, I'm going to hand over now to Peter Lukens, who will be moderating the first session. Peter is the head of EQS for North America for Siemens, and he's also the vice chair of the G Plus North America. So, Peter, I'll let you take it from here.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm going to be going over our challenges and achievements section, or achievements and challenges section here, and got a number of great speakers here with us to answer some questions that we've generated, and hopefully some that you'll be adding to the mix as well. Please feel free to add your questions to the Q&A section of the webinar here today. So I'll do a quick introduction of the team here. As we go through the group, Jay Sousa. Jay is a health, safety, and environmental professional with Avangrid, with extensive experience in construction and maritime operations. He's worked as a consultant as well, and since Jay joined Avangrid, he's worked on 4 U.S. offshore wind projects, so lots of experience there. We also have Simon Hayes, who is the head of QHSE in Americas for Ørsted. He's based in Boston, and he brings a lot of experience from previous roles with Ørsted, a robust skill set that includes offshore drilling, inspection, engineering, risk assessment, energy, and more. And we appreciate Simon being here. We also have Kirsty Spears, HSEQ manager for Total Energies. She brings around 20 years of valuable experience in management of HSE risk with Total Energies, and also production and trading and shipping business units. And Kirsty is currently the co-chair of the Offshore Operators Committee, a renewables subcommittee, and is also the chair of the ACP Offshore Wind Safety Recommended Practices Development Subcommittee. So thanks for joining us, Kirsty. And then finally, to round out the group, we have Rob Hall, who's the head of Safety, Security, and Sustainability Americas for Equinor. And he's responsible for safety, security, and sustainability across the entire Americas portfolio. And prior to being a part of the renewables group, Rob was over 7 years in safety leadership as a part of Equinor's U.S. oil and gas onshore operations. So thanks again to the team here for joining us today. I'm sure we'll have a great conversation. And to get us started on that, I guess we'll start off with our first question, and really not directed at any one individual in particular. So feel free to jump in, whoever wants to go first. But really, we want to start with the highlights here, and really just looking at your projects in the U.S. and what are some things that you've been proud of as you look back at what you've been doing, and maybe what you see in the immediate future. And please note, I know we've heard a lot of things in the press, and if maybe you could take a moment to highlight something that we haven't heard, or the team here on the call hasn't heard yet. So maybe, I don't know, Kirsty, do you want to start first?
Yeah, I can. Thanks very much, Peter. So for us, we're very much in the infancy with our projects here. So we're in the development stage. We haven't put any steel in the water. We are working on a lot of survey work right now. And so for me particularly, the real highlight that I've had over the last 16, 17 months is the fact that we've completed a significant amount of survey work offshore, sometimes with 4 and 5 different vessels operating at the same time. And also with remote operated vessels being controlled from a room in Canada without incident. And that's huge for us, particularly when we're looking at the particularly when we're looking at the density of activity happening in the New York Bight area, not just with other developers, but also other users of the area, recreational users, fishing activities. So for me personally, that's been a really satisfying 16 months to see us get to that point with a really excellent safety record.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Rob, you wanna go next?
Yeah, glad to. And thanks for having me, giving me the opportunity to speak here and share about our project and just perceptions on the offshore wind industry in the U.S. One thing that I'd maybe highlight that I'm particularly proud of that doesn't get a lot of attention in the press and the news is regarding our external stakeholders and the reach outs that we do and the engagements in local communities. I think we hear a lot from the oppositions towards the projects. I think you can get voices that can be very loud and rise above the crowds and get some attention. But it's important to point out that we have a strong base of supporters for these projects that are coming to our external engagement sessions, speaking up, raising the awareness that they want these projects. They understand the value of them, of bringing green energy, of bringing clean jobs to the industry in America, of helping build a new industry in the Americas, and very proud to be part of that. I've sat in the audience and observed as our community affairs teams engage in these stakeholder forums, and at times they take quite a bit of heat again from some of those opposition groups, but always very impressed by the proponents that they gain that are willing to stand up and speak in their communities and show the support towards these projects. So worthy of acknowledging that action that we're developing out there. I'm very proud of it.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob. Simon, anything you would like to add?
Yeah, thanks, Peter.
Sure.
I think there's a huge amount of benefit bringing an industry into the US. I think the milestones and achievements are coming thick and fast. I think for Ørsted coming into the Americas maybe 6-7 years ago, we came in to deliver predominantly the Coastal Virginia project in 2020, and that was, albeit people say it's 2 turbines, it's not too difficult, but this was the first in federal waters, and we learned quite a bit. We did it under the cloud of COVID. I think that was a significant challenge, I think, for most people, but to build a project as well, that presented its unique challenges. But also working in the US with new suppliers and new local content, I think the learning environment was very positive for the future projects. And moving up the coast, I think now we're pretty much towards the completion end of South Fork. Extremely proud of the relationships we've built, not just with other suppliers here and developers, but also the authorities. I think we've grown together, if you want to call it that. We've shared our best practice. We've shown exactly how we functionally manage safety and promoted that through the right channels. So I think I wouldn't do my team justice either if I didn't mention them. They've come together from different industries. They've grown within the renewable sector, and I think they're delivering projects now. So yeah, huge amount of pride in that achievement.
Awesome. Thanks, Simon. Yeah, I think that's been one of the key things as we grow here in the U.S. is finding folks that are, have the skill sets that we need to grow and in the industry here and be successful. So that's a great point. Jay, anything you'd like to add?
Sure thing. Thanks, Peter. Really happy to be here and share information today. To piggyback off Simon's point there, representing Avangrid Renewables, one thing that I'm really proud of is the way we've built out our teams, highly diverse, capable and competent teams to work across projects in various stages of either development, execution, or moving towards operations. We all know it's challenging to get resources in offshore wind and to try to get the right experience and background experience to be right for the role we have at hand. But oftentimes, you're pulling from all different industries, nuclear, utility, oil and gas, whatever it may be, and blending these folks together to achieve the task at hand. And I'm really proud at the way the industry has done that. And again, the people we get to work alongside. Again, with Avangrid, it's really nice to see even our projects that are now in development and may not go into operations for 4 or 5 years out. We're still, hiring and building out teams and focusing on the operations and maintenance phase of those projects. And we have operations teams focusing on that scope, even though we're so far out. So that's really nice to see all the planning and the people come together to tackle what we have here.
Awesome. Great. Well, I think that's a great way to start off the conversation. So thanks, thanks for sharing all those great highlights with us. And I think there's certainly some crossover there in all of your responses. So, moving from highlights, let's talk a little bit about challenges. So, maybe share with us what are some things that you didn't expect right away, and looking back, are there some things that maybe you could have done a little bit better, a little differently in retrospect, and then what do you think you can take from those and move to future projects or future decisions? Maybe start with Rob this time.
Yeah, I'm glad to jump in there. As we reflect back and think about, if we had the chance to kind of hit the reset button and approach again, I'd actually turn the mirror quite a bit internally in our own organization's approach to developing these projects in Americas. Equinor is a broad energy company at our hearts, and historically we started off as an oil and gas company and have built very significant projects globally. And I think there is a little bit of taken for granted the institutional knowledge we have to develop these large projects and the transferableness to developing offshore wind projects in Americas, where it's a brand new industry. And I think some of our own internal processes for approaching our contractor vetting policies, our different programs that we use to set ourselves up, at times were not always fit for purpose. Found ourselves implementing some square pegs into round holes situations, trying to force fit things to fit our global organizational model for project deliveries. I think we've learned to be more pragmatic, to understand how to nurture this fledgling industry and not be too onerous in the requirements that we need to implement there, to work together. We think one of the neat things that's happening here as we develop this contractor base to support us is very simple understanding that people are hungry to support this industry. They want to come, they want to work, and they want to work safely with us and for us. But we also need to be smart in how we engage and how we lift up the contractors to meet all our expectations for delivery towards safety.
That's a great point. Yeah, don't want to make move too fast, right? And make mistakes. And so slow and steady wins the race, as they say, right? Kirsty, go ahead.
I'm gonna piggyback off of what Rob just said, because I was going to say exactly the same thing. We are historically, Total Energies is historically an oil and gas developer, and so and we have a huge reservoir of knowledge within our company, and with knowledge comes processes, comes procedures, comes company standards, requirements. And we're in this phase at the moment where we see that what has been built for oil and gas is not necessarily the right thing to utilize for offshore wind. We have to be more flexible. We have to be more pragmatic. We have to be a little bit more nimble, or we end up putting in place a large administrative burden for ourselves. So we're in the process right now. I would say globally in the company and certainly here in the US, where we are adapting and making sure that we are not being overly onerous and applying those, almost like process safety specific requirements that you would have in oil and gas, applying something heavy for oil and gas to offshore wind, which does not have the same risk exposure that we would see in oil and gas across all elements.
Yeah, great comments. Thanks for that, Kirsty. And Rob as well. Simon?
Yeah, it seems to be a common theme here, and I think hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? I think I think time for me was one of the things we perhaps underestimated. I think it takes time to develop not just the relationships with your suppliers, but also to get that understanding as to what the standards are that you will be applying. So to Kirsty's point, we come with an international set of standards which may not be super relevant to those small one-man companies that are working out in New England. Now, if we overlay that with our local content requirements, we want to make sure we have an industry that is open to all. And therefore, we have to right size or risk assess suppliers and scopes individually. But that is time consuming. And my team spent an inordinate amount of time trying to find the match with our suppliers and our local content to make sure we put people to work in the best possible way. So I think time for me is one of the things we may have underestimated something. We could have planned a little bit further in advance, but we're seeing the fruits of that hard work now. So I think it's only a positive coming out the back end of it. We put a lot of stake in our rehearsal of concept drills. We pull the right people into the room well in advance, so we clearly explain our requirements and expectations, but also listen to our suppliers and OEMs. How do they intend to do what they need to do? And then in those concepts and those drills, we find the middle ground. And I think that's how we go together as a team. I think that's paid dividends for us over the last years, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Great. And Jay?
Sure. I think for me personally, coming on with Avangrid 2 years ago, with a company who has all this experience, 20 offshore wind projects in their portfolio and lots of onshore renewables projects, looking at the challenges we have in New England in the Northeast region of the U.S., between, like Simon said, the timing of it all, working with local content, the weather, the challenges with weather, but then also just applying, what we are, the template that we know that works on other projects in other regions, may not necessarily work up here in the Northeast of the U.S. So that's something I didn't anticipate, is even when it comes to all the systems we have in place in trying to plug them in here, we find that doesn't work. Square peg, round hole sometimes. So trying to rewrite programs, rewrite documentation, talk to local contractors and try to solve those problems. So that's one thing I didn't anticipate, is the amount of challenges that would come with, even having all these systems and the structure in place. Actually making it work and executing it is much more challenging.
Sure, no, it's a great point. That not everything's transferable, right? Especially when we look at local rules, regulations, how we interact with our suppliers or contractors. Yeah, it's a lot of difference. So great comments. Thank you all for that feedback. So, let's talk a little bit about G+. A cornerstone of G+ is using data, right, that we get from members to really look, analyze, and identify areas where the industry has risks. Focus a lot on offshore, but onshore as well. How do you, in your organization, use this information, right, to effectively help your company and your supply chain deliver the scope of work that you're trying to deliver in a safe way as possible? Simon, you want to kick us off for this question?
Yeah, sure. I think talking about South Fork specifically, I think there's a wealth of data available, and it's global data. So there's a groundswell of information coming in, which makes the trend analysis more accurate for us. So when we bring new contractors in, we've been sharing this information, but also using it to help better decision making. If you're talking about risk mitigation, then you clearly see where the trends are going. Therefore, if you take a risk-based approach, you can approach the higher risk first and then work backwards.
Sure.
Performance monitoring, it's good to have a benchmark so we know how well we're performing. So I think that's another important element for us. And as I mentioned before, the decision making, we can put resources into the right places at the right time. And I think that's hugely important when you have a big infrastructure project which has its own momentum. We need to be making the right decisions in the right time to be successful. I think Kirsty mentioned before about process improvement. We take that data and feed it back into the processes, because we can't just keep cutting and pasting the same process and hope for the same result. Sure. We need to make sure they evolve over time and continuously improve. And I'm sure we have authorities on the line, so I'll mention legal compliance as well. That's an important piece of the puzzle, isn't it? So
absolutely.
Yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Good. Yeah, thank you. Kirsty, anything to add there?
I mean, I think that Simon was really comprehensive in that answer, and I think that it's quite likely that we're all using the data in the same way. It's incredibly valuable to have this kind of data. It's incredibly valuable to be able to look at what the trends are, look at what the major causes of incident are, because then that allows you to plan going forward. You know where you're being able to, or where you have to put additional resources and effort into management of risks. And it's clear for us, we're all in the same position. It's our contractors who are on the front line. It's our contractors who are the ones who are directly there facing that risk. And so it's as responsible developers, we all have a requirement to do everything that we can to make sure our contractors are as safe as possible. And that means utilizing that data, helping our contractors to make sure that they have the processes, the procedures in place to protect their own personnel, and monitor the performance of the job to make improvements as we go. Ultimately, none of us want anybody to be injured on our work sites, And so I always feel that I just think that having that baseline of data is just super critical for forward planning and for correct identification of risk and mitigation of risk as we go through our projects.
That's great. Jay, anything from your side on this one?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. I think when it comes to data and how we can use that, we're all compiling this data and we're all trying to share it with each other. I think the most critical piece is how quickly that gets done, because even once we receive that data, it takes every organization time to process that and then to come up with a plan on how we're going to implement, the changes or the mitigations from learning that. So I think that the sooner we can get that data shared, for me, my opinion is that it really comes down to how quickly and effectively that can get shared. So each respective organizations, tier ones, contractors can start actually acting on them. So I think, finding efficiencies and how that's shared is critical.
That's great. And Rob?
Yeah, there's plenty I could say that's already been said by the other three. But I may also chime in on the perspective that, this data that we gather and we comb through and we look at together, in some instances, it's intuitive to maybe where some of those trends may land for us. If we're intimate with our operations, we understand that we're going to have injuries related to manual handling when you're schlepping gear bags around and the boats and everything. And the data often just helps validate what we know out there, and really helps when we need to promote the story of the risks that we have within our work areas across our organizations, as well as externally providing comfort to our regulators that we are consciously aware we have data to back up what our risk picture is, and that it helps us be very strategic in developing mitigation plans to honor the well-being and protection of the people, the environments that we work in. So this collective data that we get, then we're continuing to build on the industry, just has so many compounding benefits to all of us. And ultimately, it is how do we use it that makes the biggest impact. And I know that I see being used firsthand across our project teams as they bring in discussions, particularly when the annual report comes out from G+, that there are very conscious evaluations and reflections upon what's been identified in the trends over the past year, where we've seen movements, both positive and negative, in those trends, to help understand, are we implementing mitigations that are really moving the needle out there? Are we making a difference and challenging ourselves, and using that data as that benchmark to help us understand, are we having the impact that we think we're having out there?
Yeah, that's great. And actually, based on those great responses you just had, I'm actually going to expound on this question a little bit more and ask you, the data piece is one part of it, right? And how we use the data. But the other end of it is the communication piece, right? And how we effectively get that information into the hands of the people that are doing the hard work every day. So maybe could each of you mention like a unique way that you communicate whether it be an incident or a particular area, a focus area that needs to be, really honed in on by the teams that are doing the hard work in the field. Simon, you want to take that one?
Sure. I mentioned South Fork Wind, but I think we have a portfolio project in the Northeast here. It's down to us as the developer or the owner to ensure that we are cascading this information accurately. And this isn't a case of just forwarding it on. It really is to sit with these companies, our prime suppliers and contractors, to align our expectations. We see these peaks in trends, we see negative trends, but we need something tangible. We talk about commitments a lot, but we want actions. So until we see those changes in the projects, in our contracting companies, I think then we've got some level of success. And I mentioned the rock drills, we have these rehearsal of concepts. We're trying to verify in those drills exactly how we've managed this data, what are we mitigating, what are we changing from the last time we did this. So the pressure's there. We have the information to change, but there's a high level of expectation to come out of this with actions.
That's great, action oriented like that. Anyone else want to take that? Rob?
Yeah, I'll jump in. So I think it's a bit mixed approach, fair to say, of how we try to get this information out. I think there's the old standard email chains. Hey, safety alert came in, let's pass this along, please share this around. I don't think we'll ever get out of that mode, but I think it's a good one to kind of reach multiple corners and people kind of take it upon themselves to know who in their work groups may have missed out on the initial and pass around. So I think there is value in that methodology, if we call it a methodology or just kind of an approach that we all engage in out there. But also, particularly when it comes to our tier ones, implementing the expectations in the contracts to utilize industry best practice, and oftentimes that's pointing to G+ and best practice documents that are being developed out there, and really putting a bit of accountability on our and our contract partners to also educate themselves and then we'll bring those discussions into supplier quality review sessions, and whether we're engaging in an initiative in an operational area where we've put a focus attention, we're leaning on some of this data that is developed, why we've set together a campaign to address hand placement injuries. And oftentimes we're going to develop those campaigns, as mentioned earlier, as a result of the data that we've gathered is kind of validating why we need to burn the calories and put together these initiatives. So there's many facets of where this data is cascaded out to our partners and across our industry. There's no one surefire way that we're going to reach everybody, but we just have to be conscious that we're trying every which way we can to get that information out.
Great, thanks, Rob. And Jay?
Sure, I would say at Avangrid, one thing we do pretty effectively is these safety campaigns when it comes to one particular issue we have. If we see a trend, across projects, specifically in offshore wind, what we'll do is we'll have a safety campaign. We'll generate some alerts. We might take the worst case event and use that as the example in the campaign. As that gets issued in some kind of alert, and how we take action on that is, we're getting those alerts shared to everyone first and foremost. We're having the discussions. We're passing that on to contractors, physically arriving on site, showing them the alert, walking through what happened, and then actually posting it, let's say, on a contractor vessel. So we can post that alert so other folks can read it, their employees can read it. And then, to further that action, anytime we have a hazard session, for example, and we can bring up those campaigns to place further emphasis on what mitigations go into place moving forward on other scopes of work. So I think, talking about it, having visual representation of the issues, maybe of the worst case, scenario, to really let it sink in for folks what the impacts are. And taking that action to keep bringing it up and discussing it to put the mitigations in place even last minute before the work begins on a specific scope.
No, I like it. I'm definitely hearing multifaceted approach, lots of different ways to approach it. So that's good. Kirsty?
Yeah, I think the one other thing that I would talk about from a Total Energies perspective is we have a quite a defined process on, and I'll talk about our survey vessels on how we're communicating on safety issues and performance, etc. On any of our survey vessels, we have client representatives, and our client representatives are selected to be technical experts to be able to control the activity offshore. But also, all of our client representatives that we bring onto our vessels are also HSE qualified, and so we enable, or we empower, I should say, our client representative as our company representative on that vessel to be heavily involved in HSE with the contractor on those vessels. And so when it comes to communication, if there is something in particular that we want to make sure is communicated properly to our contractors, then we use our client representative as a conduit for that communication. You know, that individual, we've verified that they are qualified to be able to do that. And it gives them puts a face on the vessel, who's able to communicate directly. Of course, there are emails that go. Of course, we have campaigns, etc. But that face-to-face communication is just so important, and so that's something that we do across all of our vessels that we're utilizing.
Good. Awesome. Thanks for that. All those answers. I'll just take a moment to encourage those that have joined the call here to use the Q&A if you have some specific questions that you'd like to ask the team here. While we've got these experts, absolutely an opportunity for you all, so please use that. I got a question here that I'll toss to Jay specifically, but others, please feel free to offer your answers as well. So Jay, what are the unique issues pertaining to the U.S. that you've encountered in your operations in terms of safety, and what are some specific things that you've done to tackle them?
Sure, thanks, Peter. Anyone that knows me or works with me knows that, for example, medical emergency response is a passion of mine, and something that I work really hard to try to solve, and try to help implement the best possible practices we can for the offshore wind industry, specifically in the U.S., again in the Northeast region. I think that's a real unique issue for us when it comes to access. There are certainly other global projects that are in even more remote areas or further offshore. But the Northeast region, the workforce itself is not exactly prepared for that. We're not used to having places of work in such remote locations, and having such struggles with access. And with my responsibilities and a shared responsibility on the projects of everyone involved is keeping people safe, make sure people can get home and get the right treatment they need if something goes wrong, even if it's not work related, right? Even if it's just some kind of non-work related medical event that they're having. Getting them back home safe and getting them to the treatment that they need is critical. And that's something that I'm very passionate about, and I think it's a unique issue in our industry that we have yet to really implement a solid solution for. I think the mitigations we have in place now get people care, a certain level of care, but maybe don't get them back to the hospital in the right amount of time. Especially let's say a level 1 trauma center where someone's either having a serious cardiac event, or they have significant burns to their body, or they've suffered extreme trauma, physical trauma. So having access to those level 1 hospitals like we have in Rhode Island, like we have in Boston, and getting them there quickly and efficiently. Again, it's something I'm really passionate about. I think it's a unique issue for us in not being used to, having to work in these remote locations, having to use helicopters, for example. When it comes to the solutions we have now on the vessels and using medics, providing that treatment is great, but again, they need to get to where they need to be. I've worked in emergency medical services as a technician, and I know that you provide the best level of care you can in transport, but the most important piece of that is the transport and getting them there. So
Yep.
Again, that's a unique issue as far as how we've tackled that. Again, working with the resources we have right now, the helicopter operator we have up here in New England, looking at different options, working with other developers, because there are significant costs to getting someone back quickly and efficiently, right?
Sure.
Looking at other practices and increasing the amount of training everyone has out there when it comes to enhanced first aid, and looking at GWO enhanced first aid training, looking at hospital rooms on different vessels as we procure vessels, having better medical resources. So that's some of the things we're doing to try to tackle that specific issue. That's really important for me and for most of us, I would say.
Awesome. Thanks, Jay. Any of the other team members here like to add to that?
Yeah, I might add to it a little if
Yeah.
I could, Peter.
Please.
And it's really just building off of what has been said about, we do have these challenges that are unique as we try to grow, particularly in this region of the U.S. and the Northeast corridor. And I think one of the strong benefits from organizations such as G+ is this gives us an opportunity for all the safety representatives to come together from the peer operators and look for the opportunities that we can really come together, whether it's consortiums or other outlets, to lift this industry, to support one another. This subject of availability for medevacs and other Healy services is important to all of us. But right now, the structures in place are, well, the structures are not in place on the Northeast as they are, say, in the Gulf of Mexico, where we have a very strong oil and gas presence, and over time has been built up to help service and provide that support that's absent currently from the Northeast. So that's a prime one where we can and we do talk as G+ members and look for opportunities to evaluate and see how we can all pitch in to lift the readiness to provide emergency response and care to everybody working out in the offshore wind farms. So just an example kind of what G+ is also the benefit that we're doing to bring us all together to help take these challenges on in a more unified fashion.
That's great. Great feedback. Simon?
Yeah, I think it's very similar in the content that we've heard already. I think I've seen the growth in the UK and then moving into Germany, and that growth in the new market, and then the Dutch sector. Moving to the US, I was surprised by not just the growth of our company, but the other developers alongside us. So we're all growing and trying to achieve something in parallel, and that draws an awful lot of resource. So when we're pulling on that resource, there's a defined pool. Without pulling people internationally, we have to use what we have locally to a certain extent. And for me, one of the challenges is levelizing that knowledge and understanding of safety and say, okay, this is our expectations. Can you meet or exceed this? And some of the things that really stood out from my perspective is the companies with a continuous improvement mindset. It's not just leaning back on compliance and saying, I'm compliant. It's okay, I understand and appreciate this new market. We're going to introduce a lot of new people from varying backgrounds. It's how do we levelize that knowledge? I think it's a great problem to have because people are receptive. But what surprised me in this new market is the number of developers and projects all trying to do this simultaneously.
Yeah, that's a great point. And Kirsty, anything from your side?
I don't think that I've really got anything in detail to add. I think I would just kind of echo what everybody said. I think we're all we're all kind of involved in the same industry groups. We see the same challenges. There are absolutely some. For me, the workforce development, the local content element that we see here in the US is another challenge on top of building a safe project, working with a whole new raft of contractors, making sure that we have clear HSE requirements for contractors, and these contractors can actually meet those requirements because, there's a difference between working with the Fugro and working with a contractor of 4 or 5 different people. You know, there's a different level of safety knowledge. There's a different level of resources available to implement the requirements that we as developers ask of contractors. And so for me, that's a real challenge that I've seen, and I think we have to be very measured, clear, and try and have consistency across all of our developers on what we're asking our contractors. We're all utilizing the same contractors, you know, to a certain degree. And so it would be, in an ideal world, we would all have the same or very similar requirements. And then that allows consistency, that allows moving forward, and it allows that continual improvement that Simon was mentioning. You know, we're not asking contractors to implement fully new systems for another developer when they already have something that is 90% of the way there, you know. So,
or at least a baseline of consistency, right? Something to build on.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yep. Okay, great. Thanks for those great answers. And I'll actually toss this next question to you, Kirsty. You know, we talked about this a little bit earlier in the call. You know, we've obviously got a lot of great best practices from other areas, other industries like oil and gas. You know, how can we take what we've learned in those industries and in a sensible way try and, you know, manipulate that to be used in a really in an effortful way in making successful wind farm projects, right? And at the same time respecting that there is differences, right, between the two industries, and I guess leveraging the best and making sure that we're not over leveraging to overcomplicate the situation. What are your thoughts there?
So I think that we almost have to split this into two. Number one, why? What's the driver for us taking guidance or utilizing baseline guidance from other industries? And so I come back to data on this one. We talked about the G+ data. G+ data gives us annual information around the TRIR, the total recordable incident rate, the lost time incident rate. If I take, for example, the oil and gas industry, we have IOGP, the International Association of Oil and Gas Producers, which also has data. That data goes back to around 1998. And if you look at G+ performance in 2022, the TRIR was 2.82. The LTI was just over 1.03. In 2022, for the oil and gas industry, the TRIR was 0.9. The LTI rate was 0.28. And that's directly a direct correlation between, or a direct comparison between that data, because it's the same metric, it's the same ratio on million man hours, it's the same incident classification. You have to go back to 2006 in the oil and gas industry to see the same safety performance that we saw in the global offshore wind industry in 2022. In 2006, the TRIR was 2.92 and the LTI was 0.99. So it's taken the oil and gas industry 16 years to get to where they are now.
Yeah.
So in a very, very, very simplistic way, you could say that the global offshore wind industry safety performance is 16 years behind oil and gas. Okay, and now that's a very, very simplistic way to look at it.
Sure, right? Sure.
But what have these industries done in the last 16 years to get to the safety performance that they have now? And I think that's the important thing. Okay, I think that there is a huge scope for us to look at what these other industries have done. That the IOGP have guidance documents on lifting, construction, diving, geosciences, road transportation, aviation, helicopter operations. And for me, there's this opportunity for an industry association such as G+, to look at what is available out there. And as a group, almost build an industry position. You know,
Mm-hmm.
many hands make light work. I know that that some developers are probably doing this work themselves. But if we were to do it in a very collaborative way, then you have the benefit of knowledge coming from ex-EMP. You have the benefit of knowledge coming from very let's say legacy brains in the offshore wind industry to find that middle point, the point of compromise, because we know that oil and gas, we talked about it, you know, I think we all talked about it as one of the challenges that we saw. Those procedures, those processes that we have internally as companies built for oil and gas, not necessarily being fully applicable to offshore wind. There has to be this sweet spot that we find where these other industry guidelines can form the baseline for us going forward, and then you have your company elements that you can add on top. So we have consistency for contractors. So I would almost throw this question to industry for me, to find the to evaluate the guidelines, to identify which guidelines are the best ones to use. So we have an industry-wide position, because I think that's where we're able to make the most impact on this. You know, if we're doing it as an industry as opposed to just one company doing it on its own, that gives us consistency. It gives us something to build on going forward.
That's a great point. I think the challenge is that, you know, you obviously want to learn from past mistakes of many years of experience that oil and gas and other industries have gone through. There's also a lot of pride in trying to do things the first time as you're, you know, in an industry, and growing from the ground up, right?
Yeah. But sometimes sometimes we don't need to duplicate the effort, you know, because somebody's already gone through the growing pains to do it. And so one of those things that I would refer back to, and in the oil and gas industry, there was a real kind of step change in safety performance around 2000 to 2002. And that's when there was this real focus on behavioral safety. You know, we all know about the hierarchy of control, you know, eliminating risk, making sure we have processes, barriers, etc. Well, then you're left with behavioral safety. And behavioral safety is one of the most difficult things to control, but it has such a huge scope for keeping people safe. There's a huge program of work that's been completed by the oil and gas industry that is just a valuable resource for us to utilize. We don't want to take 16 years to get to the same safety performance that we see that it took the oil and gas industry. So, you know, there are tools there. We should be using them, but we have to use the right tools in the right way. And where those tools don't fit, we have to amend or build a new tool for ourselves that does fit.
Yeah, great comments. Thanks. Rob, do you want to add something?
I do. First, I just want to say, Percy, fantastic reflections. Agree with everything that you had to say. Near and dear to my heart too, when we look at the opportunities to kind of learn from and lean on practices coming from, you know, our oil and gas entities and with our own companies. But also may just highlight that one of the cool things about being in safety is how transferable it is. I think we all understand at the end of the day that the techniques and tools that we use to deliver on safety are transferable across all industries. So it behooves us as an industry to look and find out what good looks like other places and utilize those tools and those practices and methodologies to help deliver for this industry as well. I know we talk a lot about safety, at least on the oil and gas side. We use terms about steal with pride. It's all R&D, rip off and duplicate. but those are fair. That's fair game when it comes to safety, because everybody wants to share in it. Everybody's passionate about delivering the same results. Everybody's very open about serving to help one another. And that's one of the things that makes me very proud to be a professional in the safety world, is how open this community is and how we just look for the solutions that are very simple. At the end of the day, we want to keep people safe, and nobody's going to hold that secret sauce recipe, hidden in their chest. Everybody's very outward and promoting, and we should just look for those examples of where it's working, and let's do that.
Transparent collaboration. Absolutely. Yeah, great. Cool. Simon or Jay, anything you'd like to add to the conversation here on this question? Okay, good. Yeah, some great responses. Thanks, Kirsty and Rob. I always like to respect the audience here, and we have a nice question that came in. So is there an intention to create a consortium between different Northeast offshore wind projects to commonly rent a helicopter service or contribute financially to the U.S. Coast Guard fleet for emergency response? And it's a great question. I can say from the Siemens Gamesa side, I haven't heard of any discussions personally about this, but certainly as owner-operators, you all may have a little bit of a different perspective. Please, anyone take this one and run with it if you got some comments. Great question.
I was just going to say there have been some initial preliminary discussions. Nothing fixed, but it's definitely something that we've been discussing.
Okay, good.
Yeah, there's a number of work group calls that we're looking into this very thing and bringing us together to discuss the practicalities around it. We know any sort of program like this, it's also going to come down to the cost factor. But we all see where we benefit if we could kind of share in the pot together, and one
There's
person
value
wasn't
in it,
carrying
right?
it. So it is recognized, and it is one of those opportunities to collaborate, and it makes a lot of sense. So I think fair to say that it's definitely one of the areas that's being explored right now amongst everybody in the G+.
Good.
And there's customer practice already existing. I think Germany was a market where, as developers, we came together and for example, we had the HEMS helicopter. The emergency medical service was a shared resource, and I think that was on the back of the German requirements, where that the developers had to have this service. And I think, as I mentioned before, when we have a number of developers working in parallel and very close to each other, then these types of shared resources make an awful lot of sense, not just financially, but having the service when you want it, particularly when we talk about HEMS. I think when we talk about hoisting or crew transfer, then that's a priority issue. It's not as urgent as HEMS, but that's a different conversation where I'm sure there's benefits of scale and cost benefit.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Simon, and on that, I would say that because we're using helicopters for routine transfers, and likely all players will be doing that, especially with challenges we have with speed restrictions and vessel availability, that kind of thing. I think piggybacking off the routine transfers and having the ability to have medics on board and take folks back on the same helicopter that was used for a routine transfer for a medical case, I think that's one way to help cut cost, and then sharing that amongst other developers and other contractors out there will help make it feasible and hopefully get a solution in place. So
yeah, and I mean, I think just to expand on this very, very briefly, maybe not in relation to helicopter, but I think a lot of this is also about communication and having relationships with the local community, because in the event that there is an emergency, whether we can lean on a vessel from another industry, right? If we have an emergency type situation, or a weather event, or things about sharing information and communication and being a part of the community, I think is a big part of that, right? In terms of overall success. So great question. And I think Scott's come on here because I believe we're running a little bit out of time here. Am I correct, Scott? We need to make a transfer here, right? Yep. So listen, awesome to have all these great presenters. Rob, Simon, Kirsty, Jay, thank you so much for joining us today. And really all your great feedback and comments on a fledgling industry that's got a lot of room to grow and learn, and certainly you all are a part of that. So thank you. With that, I'll turn it back over to to Scott and for the next part of the presentation.
Thanks, Peter.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks, everyone. Hugely interesting. I'll give my reflections at the end of this session. I've nearly run out of paper. There's so much. There was so much content there. So really appreciate that. To keep things moving, then I'm gonna introduce Beate. Beate is the head of G Plus Americas. She's leading the strategic development of the G Plus in the Americas region, with the aim of improving health and safety performance within the global offshore wind industry. Beate's been with the Energy Institute, which supports G Plus since 2010, and has worked very closely with myself and the previous G Plus chairs in bringing the G Plus Americas focal group to fruition. So with that, Beate, I'll hand over to yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. And I just feel incredibly proud of being able to work with these subject matter experts we just had on the panel. And thank you very much for the members of the G Plus group. And I'm with Scott, running out of paper and taking notes, and really a lot of good comments made in the first panel. But I would like now to actually build on this first panel in talking a little bit about another thing the G Plus aims really to do, is really keen on cooperation with other organizations and partners, because like we just heard in the first panel, we can't do it on our own and we shouldn't do it on our own. So we are really keen on partnering and collaborating with different partners. And obviously we couldn't bring them all on the panel today, so we had to pick a selection of the partners we work together. And I'm really happy to introduce our next panel with starting with Jonathan. Jonathan is working with Bessie. He's one of the renewable energy specialists working with Bessie and in the office of the director. And he has various roles within Bessie's, including plan review, program development, monitoring of offshore activities and enforcement. And Jonathan is also the co-chair of the Committee for Marine Transportation Systems Offshore Energy Task Team, and has previous experience as an inspector coordinator and also experience with the US Coast Guard, what is really helpful to have him. So thanks, Jonathan, for joining us on the panel. Then thanks for turning on the camera. Then also Josh from the American Clean Power Association. Josh is the Senior Director of Safety, Workforce Training and Operations at ACP. He leads the ACP team and committees focused on worker safety, workforce development and operational excellence in support of the renewable industry growth. He has a wealth of operational and industry experience coming from the solar industry and also working with the US Navy. So thanks for joining the panel, Josh. And the final candidate in our excellent panel here in collaboration is Mateus from Abiolica. Mateus is the head of offshore wind energy at the Brazilian Association of Wind Energy and New Technologies. Mateus has a postdoc in clean technologies and innovations, and also PhD in strategy and innovation and background in consumer behavior, business administration, and marketing. So welcome, Mateus, to this panel as well. And I think it's really to allude of what we just heard before, and I think to show that we in G Plus work across industries, across our members, developers and contractors, but also across regions. So a lot of learnings have been taken over to the Americas from Europe, but we also have a group in APAC where we have various operations in offshore wind and bring all the learnings together. And obviously the Americas very active at the moment in the US, but also if we look into northwards, southwards, other regions are coming up and have interest and plans for offshore wind. So really keen on also from a very early point to collaborate with these new developing regions on health and safety in the sector. So with these candidates, I really would like to reflect on what we just heard from the panelists and see how we can actually, I mean, obviously, we all work with these companies we just heard from as our members in our in our industry. How can we really make the best use of working together of these experts in the industry? How can we collaborate on the heard achievements, but also and most necessarily on the challenges we just heard about? And I think in this panel now we have the regulator, we have two trade associations from different parts in the Americas. And as an opening questions to the panelists, I would like to really hear from you based on what we just heard in how do you think we need to collaborate as member organizations, as regulators with the industry to move the industry forward together in a safe and successful and sustainable manner? So maybe Jonathan, starting with yourself and giving your reflection, please.
Good morning, V. Thank you very much. Yeah, so I mean, going off of some of what the other presenters had, it was very content rich. And just to talk about some of the themes they talked about with the question about positives, Rob had spoken about, some of the local opposition that they receive and these new communities they're working in, but also the local support. I think one thing that is important for us as Bessie to do, and we're starting to get more and more involved at the front end and interacting with these communities to let them know who we are and that we're actually going to be overseeing these offshore activities. We have a colleague of mine is going to be going to Maine very soon to be speaking at the annual Fisheries Forum conference at the end of the month. And so I think that's an example of an important place to show our position and the fact that we are, actively overseeing the activities as well as, participating with you guys in the G+ and have an opportunity to talk with our regulated community on a regular basis. It's not something where we only pick up the phone maybe once a year, right? We know each other, and that's a big flag for us to fly in terms of all the collaboration we have across the regulator, the leaseholders, as well as the G+ organization.
Thanks, Jonathan. No, absolutely. And that's where we appreciate really the support of Bessie and how we work together to reach these communities we actually need to speak to and need to reach out to. Josh, from your perspective, obviously we heard in the previous panel a lot of communication in not making assumption from different sectors, but also not from different regions that it's applicable for these projects we are talking here in the US. What's your reflection on what we just heard?
Yeah, I mean, thanks to you guys for putting this on, and thanks for the previous panelists as well as the industry participants that are on the call. I mean, really, out of everything that was said, there was so much to take away from him. I mean, I think the biggest things for me is really, leaning into what's already been done. So Rob mentioned, the transferability of processes or experiences, right? And that's key, right? We don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel. We need to lean on, what's already been done and what's working. But at the same time, Kirsty mentioned the years of experience in oil and gas, but also recognizing the differences in risk profiles, right? And being nimble. And sometimes that means being humble enough to adjust or change our programs. And really that sharing of data. So this is where industry trade associations such as G+ come in and are so important, is the sharing of data, right? That sharing of data. And one of the big things that I think G+ really brings to the table was, their report on the top risks in the industry. That shed some light on areas of improvement where we could work together. And with that, it's important for us as associations to also eliminate any sort of duplication. And with that comes developing clarity in roles. Jonathan also just mentioned something, really important is being engaged at the local level, right? So another thing that we've got to, as an industry come together on is how do we partner with organized labor or bringing in a diverse workforce, right? The need for workers is going to continue to be stretched for decades to come. And so we've really got to be collaborative, more at an industry or an association level to say, how do we impact these change? How do we drive folks into the industry? And not only drive them into the industry, but next, how do we set them up for success? How do we let them know what roles look like? How do we let them know what safety looks like, and have those clear expectations? And that's really where, you know, associations, you know, like G+ come in to really help align with other associations, with other regions. And, you know, once again, there could be opportunity for, you know, certain slight adjustments for specific regions.
Thanks, Josh. Josh, and we can talk a little bit more details about how we avoid this conflicting and how do we avoid this duplication together. But first, I would like to hand over to Mateus, and who's joining us from Brazil, and maybe your reflection from a outside of the US perspective with a new developing market.
Great, Bate. Thanks so much for giving us the word and the opportunity for talking about the Brazilian market, guys. So many interesting insights in the previous panel. We have three main points when we consider the emerging economies, and especially the learnings that we are having with US market. First, US and Europe market. First, we always say that the regulation that we are developing in emerging countries like Brazil or Colombia, we must and we need flexibility to consider the main criteria for developing the leasing backgrounds, right? So this is one of important thing when we talk about regulation. And I saw some people here in the previously panel mentioning about it. So Colombia and Brazil right now are discussing the main criteria, and this will be really important for the development of the source in the next coming years. The second point is creating conditions. We heard some points that was mentioned by Rob and the other panelists about local content. So this is really important because all the supply chain in the world is struggling to find the best approach for offshore wind. And when we consider local content, we have to consider also financing and how is going to be the next steps for the regulation in these countries. So these are the main points that we are discussing right now, but not forgetting the engagement with the local communities as well, right, guys? So I heard Jonathan mention and Josh mention, this is really important because we've seen some cases in like Colombia that communities are already moving and manifesting their interest in offshore wind, but we have so much work to do to engage with these communities. And if we have institutions like G+, for sharing as much as that as possible, this could be great in these three main points that we are facing to develop the emerging economies and offshore wind in these places.
Thanks, Mateus. And just for the audience, please, obviously, post your questions. I'm pretty sure we have some time to answer some of your questions as well in this panel or afterwards. So please keep on posting questions after under Q&A. Jonathan, maybe we talked about what G+ is doing in the region, and you talked about the data. And I think the first contact actually G+ had with Bessie quite a while ago, 2017-18, was on, please come and share some of the learnings from operations in Europe. What kind of data do you have? What are Bessie's expectations on the way? Obviously, we started a great collaboration, but what are Bessie's expectations on global organizations like the G+ or others like IMCA? What would be your goal for us?
Yeah, so thank you for that, B. I mean, I think it's one of those things that we've already seen the G+ do in practice, which is, so to speak, let us in the room, right? We have regular meetings with the G+. Also, we have a great working relationship with IMCA. You guys are letting us have an opportunity to review and comment on things like the integrated emergency response guidelines that you guys recently sent out. Really appreciated that type of collaboration. The next step in our relationship that we're talking about really is we certainly understand G+ and their members, you know, identify some incidents and some data, and they actually start to be very proactive. And that's the benefit of you guys not being a standards body, but you can develop guidelines and be very nimble to the trends you're seeing. I think the next thing is just for us awareness a little bit further as far as when you guys are getting those type of inputs from your members, and when you guys with your members and leaseholders are taking a proactive step, towards a certain incident category or type of event you guys think that can be improved. So, allowing us a little bit more insight into that aspect of the G Plus or MCA, it would be very, very helpful, and we certainly look for that in the future.
Absolutely, and very, very happy to share the processes and how we analyze the data, how we deal the data, and to how we can even work closer together. Josh, obviously with ACP, we also collaborate. We also, I say sometimes, let's cooperate even better, because we're kind of fishing for the same experts in the industry, in the various industry groups. And I think we came quite a long way together into find, okay, what's your remit, what's our remit, and how we avoid duplication, but how we can complement each other rather than to compete against each other. What's your view, and how can we be even more effective and use our members and their knowledge and experience even in a more effective way in how we do it already?
Yeah, no, I mean, Simon earlier mentioned, just having a continuous learning mindset, right? So I think we all just need to continue to learn and adjust as needed. And there's plenty of opportunities for us to develop, clear expectations and different management styles that really drive a culture of safety and operational excellence. And really where we see that happening is leaning into associations and us coming together, whether it's G Plus, the Global Wind Council, GWO, API, Center for Offshore Safety, or MCA, BOEM, BESI, having, very collaborative discussions on what are those next steps, what are the challenges, what are the solutions, right? And bring the right folks in the room. And most recently, right, the International Collaboration Council, and really trying to identify, what are those key areas of responsibility, right? So if we're all working on different things, then we're not duplicating efforts. And if we're working on, very specific things, we're pulling in the right subject matter experts. And maybe we don't have the subject matter experts in the US because of the, infancy of the market here. So leaning on our international partners are incredibly important. A great example of, not only learning from international folks, but oil and gas is, the work that was done on the RP75W document, and that draft document that's continued to work through the processes there. When we think about that, we're looking at, developing clear safety and emergency response standards that help protect the workers, right? With those standards in development, and emphasizing the focus on human performance, right? At the core of all of these projects, we could talk about projects and development and growth, but at the core of all of these, it's humans. And, the last thing that we need to do is, continue to push for progress and lean on that time pressure and have folks get injured. The other thing that we can't lean on is, delaying projects because of this. So I think, the way that we overcome both of those challenges is, working together, providing very clear expectations that folks can, lean into. And some of those clear expectations are also what processes are working, which processes aren't. And the folks who are interacting with those processes and having those lessons learned, if it's within their own company, unfortunately, another company is going to have to learn those lessons. So, working with, G Plus and, us as ACP and the rest of the associations, I think the big thing there is industry can work together as one, right? And really making, and I think it was Kirsty that mentioned earlier, a lot of hands make light work, right? So if we're all open and transparent and working together through these associations, and if we do it in a way that we're also open and transparent with what we're working on, and what we're, maybe needing subject matter experts for, we can lean into that efficiency and hopefully, accelerate those impacts for those lessons learned.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. That should be the way forward to go. I also remember from the earlier panel, Simon, I think, mentioned the difference to Europe is in the US that you have so many developers, projects kicking off more or less at the same time. And I know in Brazil, it's going to look even more intense with so many projects in the queue, and everything starts at the same time as soon as they get the kickoff. And obviously we are all fishing, or the industry is fishing for the same resources. And I think one thing is the supply chain. How can we really work with the supply chain? How can we pull the right people in the right manner? Any comments on that? And before I really transfer to Mateus on the situation in Brazil, maybe from Jonathan and you, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, I think, with like Christy in the previous panel said, a lot of these contractors are going to be used by multiple projects and under development, right? And there's a lot of opportunity for success because of that. When you're talking about the lessons learned, but also things like the rehearsal concept that Simon mentioned as well, making sure that you have an opportunity to understand if the contractor's done previous work for someone else, what did they learn, and bring those lessons forward. There might be an opportunity too, since safety is not really an area of competition, to let folks who are working for a different developer observe some drills and exercises and things like that, even before they start working for you. We have seen, tabletop exercises where leaseholders have been more than happy to open that door to their counterparts. That's very valuable. That's a great tool for everybody to learn with, and it really provides a lot of consistency. And the other thing too, of course, it feeds back to a lot of the work that you guys do with the G Plus with the data that you guys are evaluating. Making sure that everybody's understanding when they talk about the near miss incident, what are the qualifiers for that? And then, how that feeds into your data that is going to be cumulative across the globe, but also regionally, making sure everybody's speaking that same language. And, certainly trying to minimize duplication of effort when it comes to analyzing data as well, I think is a key driver.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Yeah, I mean,
Josh, a short addition.
Yeah, what I would add is, Peter mentioned earlier about pride. Pride sometimes gets in the way of things. So I think being humble and knowing that growth is going to be there, and we can kind of maybe lay down our competitiveness to some extent and work together. And that could come in form of drills. That could come in the form of, hey, we just used this process. It was very difficult to use, and there's another project that's coming online, a different company. Give them that efficiencies and those stumbling points that you learned, right? I think sometimes, on the safety front, pride really gets in the way because we don't want to, necessarily always openly share what those stumblings are, especially if people got hurt in a certain way or we don't have certain processes in place. But laying down that pride really is going to, in my eyes, help us truly learn from those experiences and learn in a much faster way. And that's what's needed now.
100% agree. Absolutely. And we are able under the safety to do this. Jonathan, you want to, because I would really like to go to Mateus as well to give a reflection on the Brazilian market, but just if you want to add to what Josh just said.
Yeah. Thank you, Pete. Yeah, just to be very short, with what Josh just covered, making this a comfortable place, not only from, sharing across industry, but even on the work site, making sure that the people are humans, right? Making sure they're comfortable coming to their leadership and saying, I made a mistake. Let's get together and let's learn from this, and, make sure people can go forward and not have, shame or embarrassment about something like that. And they can resolve the problem is a huge part of this.
Yeah, thank you. Mateus, from what you just heard in the previous panel, but especially now here, how we work together, how we still need to improve the collaboration and the way to go. What's your reflection from Brazil as a new developing market?
Great. Many nice points about John and Roger that they are stating, and we can learn for our Brazilian market. When we talk about Brazil, it's better understand what is the currently situation of Brazil. Brazil right now is the 60th country in capacity installed. We have 29 gigawatts in onshore wind energy. But when we talk about new capacity installed, Brazil was the third country, only behind China and US. So what government is expecting to do is do the same for offshore wind. So we are preparing and paving the way for having offshore wind in the next coming future. So we released many reports and many bills to have the offshore wind in place. And for those who doesn't know, Brazil has a potential of around 700 gigawatts for exploring offshore wind. Of course, to explore this potential, we will need the regulation to be established till the end of this month. So we have a bill right now that is in the Senate in the last phase. So the bill is the bill 5,932 of this year, and we are advancing in the discussions. The main points that we would like to highlight is that Brazil has to pay attention with the criteria that I mentioned for you and the predictability for the market and in their schedules. So we are discussing with the different competent bodies and the senators as well how the schedule is going to be prepared. So if we have these signals, we can have everything on place to prepare our supply chain. Another point that is quite important, that we have members that are members from GOEC and also from G+, that are already part of the Brazilian wind energy market. So these companies are already been established here in Brazil, expecting this bill come till the end of this month. And then we can start discussing with these regulatory agencies the main next steps for Brazil. I believe these are the main points. Well, we also have an interministerial working group in the ministry that we are discussing and preparing the competent bodies. So these examples that Jonathan and Rogers and the previously panelists are giving here are really important to supply these competent bodies, not only in terms of Brazil, but also in terms of Colombia that is facing challenges regarding communities and other points that we are mentioning here.
Thanks, Mateus. And so how can, I mean, you already said Brazil once is open to learn, and not only Brazil, also with other markets like Colombia, from the experience. What do you think is the most area where you can use or you need international experience from the US, from Europe, onshore wind, offshore wind specific for health and safety?
Great. Especially for emerging economies like Brazil, as I mentioned for you, we need to prepare all the regulatory framework. We cannot say about health and safety while we don't have in place the main regulation. Of course, we already have good examples for onshore wind, as Brazil is a successful case of study when we talk about onshore wind, but offshore wind is totally different. So what Brazil is doing, it's basically working on the transfer of capabilities between oil and gas, which is a really strong sector right now here in Brazil, and starting to prepare this offshore wind scenario. So we have already ports working in these hubs of produce hydrogen, to prepare people, to train people. So this is an important thing. Have in place the regulatory framework, and after it, working with infrastructure and supply chain to start training people. And the second point is talking about the productive chain and the main gaps that we have for developing the offshore wind. We know that some capabilities we can transfer, but at the same time, we will need people from different countries to transfer this experience. So we believe we can learn in these two main points with the US market and also European, especially European market.
Absolutely. I think so relevant, the discussion we had in the first panel: be humble, use what's available, don't reinvent the wheel, but also see what is applicable, what needs to be adjusted for the regional requirements and situation, and include all the players. That's before. Maybe to all the panelists, and Scott appears again, because I know we are already at the end of the time. Even with a small panel, time just flies. But where do you see, maybe to all as a final question, do you see the the biggest opportunity, because obviously we speak here about opportunities in collaboration. So where do you see the biggest opportunity for us to collaborate in going forward? And this obviously can be based on the biggest challenge or the biggest achievement, but we talked about supply chain, we talked about regional communities. We haven't talked actually much about onshore activities. I think that's a focus. We focus too easily on offshore activities only. But what's your view on this? Maybe as a final comment. Don't know, Josh, if you want to start and then.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, when we think about onshore, you know, there's quite a bit of activity, megawatts and development that's already been done. There's a lot of lessons learned, a lot of opportunity to lean in there. So, you know, for us, you know, with the training guidelines, wind is you know, whether it's onshore or offshore, the workforce challenge is something that, you know, there's constant churn within, you know, wind technicians. And so really developing those competencies, focusing on safety and focusing on those frontline workers to, you know, have the skills, have the competencies, and have those abilities to, you know, not only stay safe, but keep these assets operating and keep them operating in an efficient, cost-effective manner that promotes, you know, future growth of the industry. So I definitely think there's some direct correlates between the offshore and the onshore wind. And, you know, one thing that we're doing at ACP, obviously being multi-tech, is we're looking across the you know, multi-tech industries and saying, okay, you know, these wind technicians that no longer want to climb turbines, a lot of them are flowing into solar and energy storage. And, you know, just like Mateus was saying, you know, we've got to identify those skill sets that are transferable. So we're not duplicating efforts, and we're leaning into what skills folks already have to really allow for the efficiency of not only, you know, offshore wind or onshore wind. You know, we really take a step back and think about, you know, clean energy and the deployment of these new energy resources and what that looks like from a workforce and a safety perspective as well. So really leaning into that and trying to pull, you know, even more associations together to collaborate in ways to where there's, you know, more clarity and less duplication.
Thanks. Yeah, I think workforce development and competence building is very important. And I was more focusing on the onshore activities and offshore wind, but I think there is obviously a lot of cross learning also from onshore wind activities in the US. Absolutely. I know, Scott, you are already waiting. I'm just checking the Q&A from the audience. We don't have any audience questions, so therefore I think we still final comments. Jonathan, Mateus. If not, I give over to Scott.
Yeah, V, thank you. I guess really just like was talked about in the previous panel, contract alignment for safety expectations is a great opportunity for everybody to succeed a little bit further. When it comes to, you know, knowledge, there are certainly a lot of folks that maybe recently retired from the oil and gas programs, as example, that have a huge amount of safety expertise. The possibility to bring those folks in on maybe a part-time basis to help really shape that and be leaders in the industry when it comes to safety, I think is a great opportunity that should be considered as well.
Yeah, by your side, I think we go the same direction of Josh and Jonathan. We would like to thanks for the opportunity to talk here, and we believe that exists a big gap in Brazil to transfer this experiences in health and safety for offshore wind. So as we have a gap, we also have a big opportunity to work on it. So thanks once again, guys.
Thank you. Great last words, and I'm happy to hand over to Scott, and excited to hear his summary and his reflection on the two panels we just had.
Thank you very much, everybody. Much as amazing. I'll do my best with the time I've got. So first of all, Big thank you to Jay, Simon, Rob, Kirsty, Peter for the first panel. It's always I mean, I work with these guys all the time, but there's always something new that comes out and gets me thinking, which is fantastic. And Jonathan, Mateus, Josh, and Beate, thank you very much for the the insights on how the industry can work together and collaborate. And also Elizabeth for introducing the wider G+. And I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the Energy Institute as well for organising this and coordinating this. So I'll do my best. As I said earlier, I've written down tons of stuff and I've tried to highlight the key points, but it's just a sea of orange. So we started with some of the highlights, and I think it was important that Peter said, let's not just say what's in the press. Let's try and give some insight to things that are outside. And there were some great thoughts there. Kirsty talked about being in development stage and the surveys and the remotely operated survey vessels, successfully undertaken with no incidents. Rob talked about local stakeholders. I think that was picked up as a theme throughout the whole conversation. And the naysayers get a lot of airtime and make a lot of noise, but actually there's a lot of people who are supporting it, and doesn't happen by accident. That's because A, what we're doing is good, and B, because all the effort that the developers, the supply chain, and the regulators put in at the front end there to make sure everyone understands what we're trying to achieve, how we're going to do it, and why we're doing it. Simon talked about milestones coming thick and fast. I can personally relate to that. Having a great relationship with the regulators, and you had Bessie on today. We meet regularly. We share very openly the good, the bad, and the ugly things that are going on, and that just really helps with the collaboration moving forward. Again, a theme throughout the whole conversation today was collaboration between different industries, whether that's offshore wind, onshore wind, oil and gas, onshore electrical. I've seen that in my time here in the US, and it's very humbling that people put their pride aside, that was talked about, and learn from each other as to best practices to develop this in a safe way. Support that. Jay talked about the diversity of the teams that have been built, and how they're leaning on each other, to make sure that we we do the best when we're during the design phase, during the fabrication, the installation, and then the ongoing operations, and then obviously through to decommissioning. Challenges. I mean, there's tons, and that's what the G+ is all about, is bringing them up and then forming joint solutions rather than just individual fixes. We talked about yes, you can learn from other industries, but they're not always fit for purpose, and you need to adjust it. We need to be smart on how we do that. We need to be nimble and pragmatic and adaptable. That was being kind of talked about. We've also got other constraints, so it's not just we're not just putting very large, complicated structures in the middle of the ocean. We've got to do that using local content suppliers who maybe this is not something that they've been totally familiar in the past with. So working with them and making sure that our processes, our requirements are fit for purposes is absolutely key. Deploying with a lot of us have come from a global approach, and which is great. We bring all that experience, but we've got to deploy it locally. We've got to understand the local side of what we're doing, whether that, and the local can mean all sorts of different weather systems, different resources available, different local knowledge on what heavy industry looks like. Data was talked about a lot. It helps us apply resources in the right places. And when I say resources, that's not just literally bodies, that's money, that's time, and people's knowledge. Let's do that in the right place, and it's not just a cut and paste. We talked about the developers, obviously, are one part of this, but it's the contractors who are facing the risks every day, and it's our job as responsible developers and regulators to make sure that they have the tools to do what they need to do in a safe way. I think we've got, things can always be better, but we've got much more efficient about collecting data, organizing it, putting it together, and then being able to review it, look at trends, look at and where do we need to focus our efforts. Keep challenging ourselves. Are we making a difference? Looking at the data that we've got, and is it actually doing what it should be doing. We heard the stats from Kirsty from the oil and gas industry, and it took them 16 years to get to those to where they are. So hopefully we can be even quicker than that with this. But we need to look at the data and we need to use it correctively. In a correct way. Talk about safety campaigns, different ways to do that. Using client reps to be our eyes and ears and representatives on the vessels. I think that was great. There was conversation about medical response, and then I think it was actually a question as well about, is there a plan to do a consortium? And I think you heard that yes, there are. It's challenging. There's all sorts of different aspects from that. I know I've been involved in it in the past, but there's absolutely a will to make that work. And again, learning from oil and gas and what was done in the Gulf of Mexico. I'm running out of time, so I say I could go on and on. I heard very positively how G Plus has been a positive force in all of this, and I'm not just sort of doing that because I sit here as the G Plus US focal chair. It is. I've come in as an outsider looking at it, and it ties everyone together. There is no competitive advantage. Let's share, let's learn, let's use the experts that we have in the industry to create good practice guides, which again we can be nimble and get them out there in short order. Okay, as I said, I could go on for forever, and then just a final about how Brazil is looking at the US globally, trying to organize itself to enter the offshore wind industry and this huge potential 700 gigawatts in an effective way. So really interesting. Thank you everybody, all the panelists for very open. I mean, I know because I work with them regularly, but they do it every time, and they come with a very open approach to everything, tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly, as I said, and it really helps us move forward. So with that, I will draw things to a close. I think there's only really, I'll leave it to Beate just to finish off and tell you about an in-person stakeholder event, and I wish everyone a fantastic weekend when it finally comes.
Thank you, Scott, and not without thanking you in particular for steering and chairing this group for quite a while now, and for your leadership and excellent summary and reflection on the points discussed. And I think we will also reflect again within our US group in the G Plus and how we can address things, and then obviously also how can we work better together with other organizations, including ACP and other associations, organizations in the US. Just to finalize, obviously this webinar is a precursor of the in-person stakeholder event we are going to have in March on the 7th in Paris in France. We do these webinars in the different regions because obviously not everybody is able to travel and can make the time to meet in person. Nevertheless, I would also like to say this is not the only annual event we organize as a G+, so we also would like to become much more interactive and to set up workshops, stakeholder events in person. Last year we had an excellent event organized together with IMCA on emergency response in New Bedford, and this really showed that we can get so much out of it to meet in person and to discuss certain topics. So please stay tuned. We will organize these events or announce these events usually via LinkedIn, or please get in touch via the website and engage with us on these different activities. Can also say, yes, I think it's all about sharing, of being humbled and be open. We can only learn from the achievements, the challenges, the good, the bad, and turn it into opportunities rather than in anything ugly. So please also share your instance with us. We do this via Toolbox in the G+, and get in touch if you would like to get more information and to work more closely with us together. And this brings me to the really end to thank also the audience. Thanks for staying online and listening to the conversations. Thanks for placing questions in the Q&A. If you have other questions coming up, please get in touch. you have all the contact information displayed on the last slide. The recording of this webinar will be shared with all attendees and also wider with the G+ and offshore wind community. So have a good Friday, have a good weekend, an excellent weekend if it's a long weekend for you in the US with the upcoming holiday, and hope to see and speak to you soon. Thank you very much.